as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching.
What does this man have to do with this Marvel character? Well, today we are going to explore that. My name is Titus, and welcome to Picture This. Let me introduce you to Justice Clarence Thomas, the longest-serving Supreme Court justice with nearly 28 years on the bench. He is a civil rights icon. He is also a proud black nationalist and the most conservative justice on the bench. With major dissents written against affirmative action, Brown v. Board of Education, and yet was accepted because of the integration of segregated schools through the ruling of Brown v. Board of Education and with the help of affirmative action into Yale Law School. And this is where I'd like to start. Why is Justice Thomas voting against and dissenting on programs he benefited from? How can he be both a deep conservative and a proud black nationalist? Perhaps we can take a bookmark from a perfectly written character, Thanos, to understand the underlying archetypes at play of empathy that leads to villainy. Starting with how deep childhood trauma affects perception of an antagonist force that isn't a man or a nemesis, but a plague that a hero is trying to defeat as a judge for all. Today, we explore how Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is like Thanos.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Senator, I would like to start by saying...
Part 1. Trauma. I grew up under state-enforced segregation, which is also as close to totalitarianism as I would like to get. This is what Justice Thomas is fighting against: state-sanctioned segregation totalitarianism.
And then you had urban squalor, and that was horrible. All-encompassing word is gross. I mean, it was putrid. It was a smell of raw sewage. There were these boards. People would make these sort of makeshift paths to get across just the gross wetness in the backyard.
But let's step back. How do you write a great character? Well, develop them into a three-dimensional character with strong motivation. And this is where I like to introduce Thanos, the major villain in Marvel's universe, both in Endgame and Infinity War. And he is a hero, in his view, attempting to protect the universe from the forces of evil, overpopulation. But I'll let him explain.
It's finite, its resources finite. If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correction.
You don't know that!
I'm the only one who knows that. At least I'm the only one with the will to act on it.
This idea, overpopulation leading to mass starvation, is a brutal reality Thanos has experienced. He's witnessed horrors, and this means the ends are always justified because the end is always worse. This is how trauma develops characters, and with Thanos, a strong motivation that we empathize with. Also note, the Marvel characters aren't his antagonists, but roadblocks to his later completed goal, killing half the universe to save the other half. He defeats the idea and is a hero. The motivation in trauma can create a character whose misguided efforts cause pain. And just like Thanos, Justice Thomas is trying to defeat the worst of all evils: racism in America. But we need to understand his traumatic upbringing. He was born to a rough urban childhood in Georgia and later sent to a private Catholic school up north, where he was met with a constant barrage of racism, and into Yale School that later cemented the idea that white liberals are just as racist as Southerners, just coy and hidden about it.
Matters of race is that whites will be superior for all time. But, and then the Constitution knows no caste, knows no color. So that would be my favorite.
He also watched as civil rights icons were killed, jailed, and how well-meaning social programs constantly failed African Americans, and how racism never stopped in America, it just bubbled underneath. While all this happened, Clarence Thomas became a strong black nationalist, reading widely from Malcolm X,
The Negro In this crooked game of power politics here in America, the Negro, namely the race problem, integration, civil rights issue, are all nothing but tools used by the whites who call themselves liberals against another group of whites who call themselves conservatives, either to get into power or to retain power.
His entire viewpoint is rooted in his identity as being both
I'm a black man in America.
and the major conclusion: America is a racist country that will never help African Americans. So better to roll back social programs and let African Americans take care of themselves, away from racist whites.
I'm not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West. Thank you.
And like Thanos, he makes judgments hurt the very people he'd like to save. Which leads me to part 2. Villainy is empathy.
When someone comes forward, the victim tends to become the villain.
Villainy is an offshoot of empathy. In an attempt to protect and save the ideal you believe in, you hurt and destroy whatever you deem is worse.
No, listen to me. My grandfather fled Arkansas because he was threatened with lynching. Real lynching, not this metaphoric kind that Thomas is talking about.
He doesn't care about that. He only acknowledged race because it was about him.
But that's not right.
I'm not saying it is right.
That's not the issue.
But it was
is sexual
effective.
harassment.
Now, you think any of those white boys on that committee are prepared to challenge him now?
And sacrifice yourself on the way. You play judge and, with enough time, executioner to others, and then finally yourself. And this is how Thanos plays out. His ideal is that no one will starve, so he sacrifices his reputation, life's continued work, and daughter by judging that half shall go to save the universe because he is such a caring man. His empathy has been taken to the extreme that has become villainy through blindness of self-martyring. And this is where Justice Thomas follows suit. His deep and truthful fear of state-sanctioned segregation led him to being a literal judge on the major cases that decide how the law of the land will be implemented. But Thomas has also sacrificed everything to be a judge, and his reputation in front of all of America.
Destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
His empathy is so deep and great, and known as a joyful, funny, and caring individual.
I'm not going to be that way. I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to try to be a good person.
Known to know genders by name in the halls of the Supreme Court.
Look for when I see people, as I watch how they treat the least among us, the people who work in the cafeteria, the people who work on the elevator, the cleaning people, the people in the hotel. And that person, that's not a good person who treats these people badly.
But he's been blinded. His empathy has become villainy with a removal from the very programs he's benefited from. And with his continued work on the Supreme Court, he is cementing conservative rulings that are rolling back major social programs that hurt not only minorities, but also women, a group he views as a non-minority and thus in no need for protection from the state. And like Thanos, Thomas is judging from his bench and making choices that he believes are correct for all, but is blinded and binded by his childhood trauma. Because maybe there are other routes to help African Americans that don't include rolling back social programs that do help. Perhaps the reason we love popular movies is because they display truths we can understand but have difficulty articulating, such as, why does my antagonist rule against me? Maybe it's rooted in history and empathy, and this is what Supreme Court justices do all day.
I think you learn it early on. How do you conduct yourself with others with whom you may or may not agree, who might have a slightly different opinion or a much, much different opinion. And I think you see it reflected at the court. You see it, I saw it on the Court of Appeals. I thoroughly enjoy working with the people at the court.
Well-developed characters will always be in demand. It doesn't matter if they are a villain or hero, as long as they are rooted in logical backstories that create full characters with strong motivation and antagonizing foes that lead to deep sacrifices for ideals.
What did it cost?
Everything.
And though it may sound foolish to compare real-life people with characters, there is a massive reason we, as viewers, understand well-written villains. Even when they kill and hurt along the way, we want to see them, at times, succeed. Because in truth, they're right. But also why villains and characters as a whole may give us an understanding of enigmatic characters that do touch our real lives. Such as powerful Supreme Court justices with specific rulings that are well-rooted in personal difficult history that we can empathize with, because his overarching belief, racism in America, is rooted in truth. And perhaps we can turn to popular storytelling to understand why others judge and rule against us, and how what we view as villainy is empathy for them. They care for an ideal. It's just okay that we get sacrificed along the way for their ideal. And we should understand a man like Justice Thomas.
I bet you're all sitting here right now saying to yourselves, who's the black Supreme Court judge who's a rights machine for the brothers?
Thomas!
Where's Thomas?
Because he is going to continue leaving a legacy that will cement his place as a conservative civil rights icon. I like to leave off on a quote by one of Justice Thomas's favorite authors that best describes him on the Supreme Court. I'm invisible. Understand, simply because people refuse to see me. When they approach me, they only see my surroundings, themselves, or figments of their imaginations. Indeed, everything and anything except me. Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man. Anyway, thank you for watching the first picture of this video essay. This was so much fun, and I'm so happy to be launching this new channel, and along with it, a podcast that will explore supplemental topics at length in the near future. And if you want to help support the channel, please check out the Patreon. Thank you, and keep on digesting movies. We still have a lot to learn from them.
Everybody just likes so much and helps to build the sense of collegiality.
So why don't they vote with me? They just kindly disagree. You know, it's just...